Hey, this is Doctr Night Class. Go ahead and click like and subscribe below. Hope you enjoy the medical content. Ventilation. Ventilation is basically it's air getting into the lungs. Okay? I'm talking from the beginning and the nasal cavity. When air goes with high resistance into the nasal cavity, don't worry in the nasal cavity, it's ready for high resistance, right? Because it has stratified epithelium. Stratified epithelium. It's ready for high resistance. That airflow goes through the nasal passage, okay? It's going to come down your trachea. Your trachea is just one tube. It's just one tube. Looks a lot like this. It's just one tube. Since it's just one tube and the resistance is not divided amongst many tubes, you can say it's high resistance. There's nothing in parallel with the trachea, just one. As you continue going down the trachea or the respiratory tract, you get these divisions, these bronchioli, okay? These divisions. You're adding things in parallel so that you can decrease the resistance of airflow. Adding things in parallel. Now, air's coming down. Air's coming down. The reason why we add things in parallel is to decrease the resistance. We want air to reach the alveoli nice, slow, and smooth so that it can participate in gas exchange, okay? So anatomically, we have things in parallel, anatomically, okay? Now, there's another way to get air down into the lungs. I'm talking from the nasal cavity all the way down to the alveoli where gas exchange is, okay? You can do it here. You can do it up here, okay? Now, I mentioned that there's a beta-2 receptor somewhere in the lung as well, okay? And it's gonna have its glory when we talk about asthma, but I'm letting you know that if you stimulate beta-2, it'll dilate the arterioles, okay? And it'll improve airflow, okay? It'll improve airflow. The same way how beta-2 dilates the arterioles and it can also improve blood flow. The same way. Air and blood, they're both flows. We can both agree with that. So it kind of makes sense that they would have similar formulas too. They would have similar receptors like beta-2, and they'd have similar formulas, okay? Similar formulas. All right, so all this, putting things in parallel and dilating the radius of the lumen would increase forward flow, but ventilation, I'm talking about airflow. I'm not talking about blood flow yet. Perfusion is blood flow. Ventilation is airflow, okay? So perfusion is blood flow. Ventilation is airflow. Now, both of those have to deal with resistance, for sure. Let's talk about ventilation now, for real, okay? Those are concepts we've already talked about. Now let's talk about some new things, okay? You guys have already heard, I know you've heard this before, that the lung is divided in zones, okay? So the upper part of the lung, that's zone 1, where they call the apex. It's just the pointy part of the lung on the top. The middle portion is zone 2, and then the third portion is zone 3. This is the base of the lung, okay? The base of the lung. Now this triangle here is indicating how much of this ventilated air is actually making it to each zone. So zone 1 gets a lot of ventilation. It's a lot of ventilation. Zone 2 gets less. Zone 3 gets close to, well, it's still going to get some ventilation. I'm not going to lie. It's still going to get some ventilation, okay? So does anybody have any idea why zone 1 gets more ventilation than zone 3?
It's more negative up there because of gravity.
Ventilation, right? So
Oh.
air. What do you think? Why does zone 1 get more ventilation air than zone 3?
The alveoli are bigger, like in size.
That could be true. That could be true. Since the alveoli are bigger, yes, in theory, they may have like a more negative pressure, which can contribute to the gradient. However, I have a different way of thinking about it. Okay.
Is it because there's not enough blood flow up there?
Mm, no, we're not into blood flow yet. We're just talking about airflow. Airflow. So zone one gets the best airflow for this reason. Okay? The further air has to travel in the lumen. So this is a lumen, we agree? Okay, the further air has to travel in a lumen, the more opportunity for that lumen's wall to offer resistance. The further air has to travel inside a lumen, so air is going down a lumen, the more opportunity for the lumen's wall to exert resistance. So if air has to travel from here all the way down here, that's a lot of lumen wall, right? That's a lot of resistance that has to influence the airflow, right? So the further it has to travel, the more resistance. And once upon a time, we talked about R, okay? And we said R equals 1 over little r, right? Well, if we revisit this formula, R equals 8 times n. We don't care about those. But what's this L up here? This L is length. It's length. It's the length of the lumen at which the air has to travel. Okay? Since the length is further away to get all the way down to zone 3, you can expect there's more resistance, so air is not going to travel as far. The length of the lumen is longer. Since this is in the numerator, if the length of the lumen increases, the resistance increases. If the resistance increases, then airflow decreases.
For more night class content, go ahead and email me at doctrnightclass@gmail.com. That's DOCTR nightclass, gmail.com. Hope you enjoy the content.